So I've already shown you how you can plant bare-rooted trees, and I'll link that video for you up above. And I've shown you how to plant them so you can plant a ton of them in a really small space. Like I have probably a dozen of them in a really, really small area using this backyard orchard culture method. But there is a way that you can plant fruit trees. It makes it so you can plant them pretty much any time of the year. You don't have to only do it in the spring. So right now it is late September, which is also a really good time to plant your fruit trees. And I have a nice big delivery here from Stark Bros, who is sponsoring this video today. So we're gonna unbox this and I'm gonna show you how you can plant a fruit tree pretty much anytime. I definitely take this for granted because my mom has been buying trees from Stark Bros pretty much my whole life, I wanna say. But when I got this box in the mail, I had a friend over and she was like, what is that? Live plants? Like, I didn't realize that a lot of people don't know that you actually can get live plants off of the internet, especially fruit trees. Of course, I did this back in the spring. I got a big shipment of bare root fruit trees from Stark Bros, and a bare root is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, where it comes without any kind of root structure on it and there's no soil. They're just kind of packed with some damp newspaper. But these are the Stark Bro Easy Starts, and they do come more like a potted plant. So we've got two trees here today. This is the Celeste Fig, I think. And I can see why this would be confusing because obviously plants need light to survive, but they ship really, really quickly. They're packed very, very well, obviously. So there's a lot of protection in place to keep the trees safe. And they don't spend very much time in these containers at all. All right, and this one is gonna be our Honeycrisp apple, and you'll see they're very different sizes. So they do come with these interior boxes that kind of hold them secure, and then you pull them out of these. They have these tabs here, so you can push down and they'll come out the bottom. So you push those tabs out and then you should be able to kind of drop it down and just lift that cardboard shell off. And now we have our fruit tree. I know it doesn't look like much from here. Sometimes they do defoliate the trees before they sell them to you, especially depending on the time of year. So right now, obviously, it's fall. So they did defoliate this one. They did not defoliate this one, although it looks like it probably could be defoliated and still be fine. And then it's just got this little bag on it to keep it moist while it's traveling. So you want to take the bag off. And there's our fruit tree. So I'm about 5'2", and this tree is clearly almost my height. So it's a pretty big, decent sized tree. It comes in this special pot, and this pot has some features that we're going to talk about in a second that make it special, make it an easy start Stark fruit tree. So let's get the other one unwrapped. This is our Honeycrisp, and this is actually the Supreme Easy Start. So that's why it's a little bit fuller, it's a little bit bigger. The pot itself is a lot larger, and we're just gonna lift this one straight up. Sometimes it's easier to lift it, sometimes it's easier to slide it out the bottom. It really just depends on the shape and size of the tree. And they've got these bamboo stakes on there, so that just keeps the actual trunk of the tree protected as well. All right, so let me show you just to compare. So this is the 4x4x10 pot, and this is the Supreme, which is a 5x5x12 pot. So pretty big difference in size. Obviously, this tree is just a little bit more established, which means it will grow a little bit faster. The pot, however, has kind of a special little secret going on the bottom. And this is what's key to making the Stark Easy pots so special, right? They've got this special air pruning slots in the bottom. And what this does is it allows the plants to develop what are called feeder roots. And feeder roots make it so that it's a lot less likely to experience stress when you transplant it. Now, I love my bare root trees. I have a whole bare root tree orchard. I'm gonna show you in a second. We'll do a quick little tour and an update since I haven't really had the chance to show it to you since it's gotten established since we planted it in the spring. But with something like this Easy Start pot, because it's already pretty well established, it makes it so much easier to transplant too. Like, you don't have to guess where your soil height needs to be because the soil height is already in there for you. You just need to stick it in the ground. So I'm going to show you the full planting process and get these out of the pot and show you what we need. But before we do that, let's just check on where the orchard is at right now. So every single one of the trees that we planted from Stark back in the spring is absolutely thriving out here. Because we're doing the backyard orchard culture method, if you're not already familiar with this, you might be like, what the heck is going on with these trees? Like, they're so short, they're basically shrubs. And that's on purpose. So with the backyard orchard culture method, we're actually pruning the trees to keep them extremely small. And this will mean that I get lower yields, but like, do I really need 300 stone fruit off of each tree? Probably not. The idea with backyard orchard culture is essentially just that we're getting a larger variety with smaller quantities of each. And I strategically picked each variety that I planted so that I'd be harvesting something different every single month from May all the way through October. And by keeping them really, really small like this, it makes harvesting easier, it makes maintenance easier. I will never need a ladder to pick my fruits. The only reason that we're taught to prune the way that we are and space trees the way that we do is because we needed to fit tractors between those trees. And I don't know about you, but I don't have a tractor. I mean, a girl can dream, but I do not have a tractor, so I do not need space between my trees for a tractor. Of course, keeping them closer together is also going to restrict the size, much the same way that pruning them aggressively restricts the size. We did also paint the trees when we planted them with this. Basically, it's a latex-free organic sunscreen that you put on the trees, because when I cut them down originally, they had no foliage on them at all. So they just needed that little bit of extra protection. Well, we won't need to do that today with these trees because it's much cooler now than it was in the spring. They did get some damage from Japanese beetles, but they bounced right back. And I think trees are a lot more resilient than we give them credit for. So you'll see that the way that I plant my trees is extremely accessible, extremely easy, straightforward, and simple, because we really want the trees to be able to thrive in whatever environment we're putting them in. So if we baby them, they're not going to have the opportunity to do that. So we have a couple empty spots in here, but I'll take you around and show you what's already planted. My memory is terrible, so I do use these plant tags that I can engrave. They're super cheap. Obviously, you can only kind of see them if you tilt them right, but we'll be looking at these as we go because I don't know what's what anymore. This is our Granny Smith. As you can see, this is where I made my cut initially when I planted the tree. And this is all new growth since I planted the tree in like March or April. It was April actually, yeah. All of this is brand new growth, and I've even pruned it back once. But I had cut this back hard and it's already bounced back with like tons of new growth. It's almost as tall as me. This one, I can tell you without checking, is my Reliance Peach. And I know that just because of the shape of the leaves and how bushy and aggressive the growth has been. Peaches are notorious for growing very, very fast. I've already cut this one back by half in July and it just filled right back in, and it's so, so happy and bushy. This right here is our Persimmon tree. She's just got the most beautiful glowy leaves. And I'm really happy with the shape of the tree, but you can see it's starting to lean a little bit. So I may stake this one just to give her a little bit extra support. Here we have our Chicago Hardy fig. I just love the shape of the fig leaves. I think they're so fun to look at. Chicago Hardy is great for a northern climate like we have here. And this is why I got this Celeste Fig. Actually, I already had another fig somewhere else on the property, but I wanted one that was just a little bit closer. Over here we have our Redhaven Peach. Now this one did something kind of weird, and it's definitely my fault. I don't know exactly what happened, but I did my header cut up here and I didn't have any growth come off of it from that bud that I was expecting to get some growth off of. This branch is coming from below the graft point, so we do need to cut this off. That's our graft point right there. But it did make some new growth starting much lower down than I would have expected it to. So all of this length can come off because the tree has decided it wants to start from way down here. Not a big deal. I'm gonna just kind of work with what it's telling me it wants to do. This is the Lang Jujube, and again, you can see there's a lot of growth down below my heading cut that I did up here. This one does have thorns, so we've got to be a little bit extra mindful of that when we're handling it. But another beautiful tree that I think is going to look so lush next year. This one has taken on a really interesting shape, which again, I totally blame myself for in terms of pruning, but it's okay. Like, I don't mind it. This is a Goldcot Apricot, and you can see that it's kind of creating like this vase structure that's very flat on the top. Oh no, this one lost its label. I don't know, we're going to have to do some deductive reasoning there and see what see what's on my list that isn't named. This is the pink lady apple. Now this one came in a lot larger than I was expecting it to, and normally I wouldn't do such a severe heading cut on something that was already this thick. Like there's my cut mark. So it's kind of doing an interesting thing here. I don't really know. Again, it doesn't bother me. It's just different. It's kind of giving us this open structure here. Last one from Stark is this Mcintosh apple. I do have a pineapple pear back there that I just moved from another location. It's kind of doing some weird stuff right now. But this one's from Stark and it's our Mcintosh. It's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how the shape is working right now. There's a couple upright branches that we need to deal with, but for now it's fine. If I pull back, you can see there's kind of a different gradation here in the wood chips. We did have to redo some of the wood chips over here because we were getting some weeds coming up and through. There's some really aggressive mugwort in this corner. But if you pull back, like it looks like they're pretty far apart. They're probably about 4.5 feet apart on all sides, which means I have a good amount of room for a couple more trees here. If I were to let the trees get larger, I would not put them up near the foundation of the house. And I'm sure there are also some people who would never put wood chips up against their house. This is a stone foundation. I'm not really worried about termites here in Massachusetts or fires forming because the wood chips are not dense enough or fresh enough for that to be an issue where the heat generated could cause that kind of thing. But it is something to keep in mind safety-wise if you're doing something like this. If you're planting larger trees, you don't want the roots to be able to grow into the foundation of your house. So that's why you need to keep them a certain distance away from your house. In this case, I'm just not worried about it because I'm going to keep them really, really, really small. So I do have room for 2 more trees over here, and that's going to be our Celeste Fig and our Honeycrisp apple. So I'm going to grab some supplies and then we can get started. Now, I know that planting a tree can seem so intimidating, but I promise you, especially like these easy start trees, it's probably one of the easier things that you're going to plant because all you really need is like a knife or a box cutter, some gloves, which I guess are optional, and a shovel. This is going to be your standard easy start pot. This is the Supreme, and then there's one size larger, that's the Supreme XL, which is just, again, a more developed tree. None of them are a bad choice. Actually, I just remembered that the Persimmon that I just showed you up there was an easy start pot. So I've already planted one of these and had great success with it. But here's what's happening behind the scenes when they're actually creating the easy start trees for you. So this is like a unique pot system. Obviously, we've got holes in the bottom that allow for air pruning. But another thing that they're doing when they're actually producing this tree is they're cutting off the taproot of the tree, which sounds really extreme and bad, but it actually allows the tree to spend more of its time and energy focused on creating these feeder roots. And the feeder roots just mean that it's ready sooner to actually start feeding from that soil and establish itself faster. But if you're at all nervous about planting a fruit tree and messing it up because of timing or getting the soil depth right or getting the size of the hole right, you can't mess this up because it's already done for you. It's already planted. You only need to make the hole as big as your pot, maybe a little bit bigger. And you'll hear a lot of times with like bare root trees specifically that you should make the hole a lot bigger so that the soil is really loose around the root system and it doesn't meet as much resistance as it's trying to grow. I don't do that with my bare roots because, like I was saying earlier, I really want the tree to establish itself in the native soil, and if it's got to fight for its life a little bit to do so, like, I'm not here to baby my trees. These trees come pre-babied, which is kind of nice. Like, I really don't have to worry about it at all. It's already got a really dense root system. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually just dig our hole. So we want to dig a hole that's just a little bit wider, but not any deeper than the pot that you're planting out of. So we've got our 4x4x10 here. So we need a hole that's roughly like 5x5x10. You can make the hole bigger if that makes you more comfortable. It just makes it so you're going to have a harder time centering it in the hole. The next thing that we're going to be doing is actually removing the tree from the planter pot. So it should come out pretty easily. It's not going to be like root bound in the pot, but you will see visible root structures in there, lots and lots of little tiny feeder roots. And because we want to encourage those roots to start branching out, stretching out, reaching into that native soil, we're going to take our box cutter or other sharp knife and just make sure that's sanitized too if it's something that you use on other plants. and make 4 scores, 1 down the center of each side. And that's all we're gonna do to loosen the roots of the Easy Start tree. Once we have the root system loosened up with the knife, we're just gonna center it in the hole. And we don't wanna push down on it. We're not compressing any of those root structures, but we do need to backfill around it so that it is secure. So what I like to do is just do layers about 3 to 5 inches thick and then reach down there with my glove. And that's why we need it to be just a little bit bigger than the size of our plant pot, so that we can tamp down gently around the roots as we go, so that the root ball is just hugged. It's secured in there tightly and it's not gonna wobble around. This is also when you wanna make sure that the tree is totally straight, because any leaning that we have right now, you're gonna end up having to correct it later. And if we can avoid that, which we totally can, we should. Because the tree is gonna come out as one strong mass of root system, and it's gonna hold together in this shape with the soil block around it essentially, you really don't need to do any guesswork when it comes to getting the height of the soil correct with your tree. What I will say is that I like my trees to be about a ½ an inch below the surface level of the soil. And what I mean by that is you actually want to create almost a divot around the tree itself, so that when water is pooling there, it can collect and it can kind of pull it in from the center of that root system out. Another thing that we can do at this point to ensure that the tree has a better chance of retaining more moisture and water anytime it rains or you water it, which I don't really water my fruit trees except for like right after we first plant them, is you can create a berm. And this just basically means, in my case where I'm planting on a slope, I'm going to place some higher mulch along that lower sloped edge to hold water in anytime that it rains, and kind of keep it from just running down the slope every time it rains. And then I do like to top my trees off. Of course, you don't need to do exactly what I'm doing here, but with backyard orchard culture method, the idea is that we're keeping it at about knee height. So I am gonna make a pretty extreme cut on these trees in order to get them to that height that I want. You don't have to do this. You could just cut off an inch or 2 if you want the tree to grow full size, but you do want to cut off a little bit at the top just to kind of wake the tree back up. Nothing is different about planting the larger Supreme Easy Start pot fruit trees versus the standard size Easy Start pots. You just need to make a bigger hole. If you're getting your trees from a trusted source like Stark Rose, you really don't need to baby them. You can trust your trees. You can trust them to do what they need to do to survive. They may not look so pretty right when you first put them in, but give them a few months. I mean, look around me. I've got a whole little orchard going that I just started in April, and everything is happy, healthy, and thriving. If you want to grab your trees from Stark Rose, I'm going to link the exact varieties that I have down below for you. I really hope this video was helpful, but let me know if you have any tree planting questions down in the comments below. Make sure you hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And thanks for gardening with me. Happy growing.